are going to look at binami transactions, and we will also look at the fugitive law. Now, what is binami transactions? In simple language, what is binami transactions?
Acts as a middleman.
Acts as a middleman. Okay, but what type of transactions are binami, and why is it so prohibited, and why do they have an act for prohibition?
Where the sale price is provided by someone else, but property stands in other persons.
Okay, okay, okay. And why is it prohibited? Why is the law prohibited? Binami transactions. Why is it prohibited? Okay, let's move ahead and understand what the law states. Okay, so basically, binami transactions is one purchases the property in the name of someone else. Okay, so you buy a property in the name of someone else, and the purchaser does not hold any beneficial interest in the property. Now, the person can also be an imaginary person. So, there can be no person if you're buying a property in A's name. A might not be in existence at all. So that's called a binami transaction. Now, they are a certain type of a financial transaction which is prohibited by the law. You cannot do such kind of transactions, that is binami transactions. We will see what transactions are called binami transactions, but for now to start, if one person purchases the name in another person, and the person is an imaginary person, so that's a binami transaction. Now, this prohibition act came a long time back, 1988. The salient features of the act are: it defines binami transactions and binami property. Now, whatever transaction has happened and the property involved becomes a binami property, and also provides exclusions and transactions which shall not be constituted binami. So they have given an inclusive definition, exclusive definition of what a binami transaction is. Now, consequence of entering into a prohibited binami transaction. So it gives you provisions that you cannot, binami transactions have been prohibited. It lays down the procedure for determination and related penal consequences. So what happens if you are involved in a binami transaction? It also provides that the powers of the civil courts will be available. It gives powers to the civil courts. Miscellaneous provisions. Central government empowers to make rules for implementation of the act. Enables the central government in consultation with the Chief Justice. So basically, special courts, all of that. The act gives allowance to the High Court and special courts to have cases regarding binami transactions. Any penalty also the Act gives, and provides the transfer of any suit between binami transactions pending in any court to the appellant tribunal. So all these are salient features of the Binami Transaction Act. Okay, definitions. There is a definition of attachment. Attachment is nothing but if the authority has considered a particular property as a binami property, and it is subject to investigation, then they attach the property. That means you cannot transfer, you cannot conversion, you cannot do anything, you cannot move the property, you cannot do anything with the property. So that's called an attachment of the property. Now, binami property. Okay, let me just project. Will be easy for. Binami property is any property which is subject to the binami transaction. So anything to do with a binami transaction that's the definition of a binami property. Now, what is a binami transaction? What is considered a binami transaction is what you're going to see. As per section 2.9 of the binami transactions means a transaction or an arrangement where the property is transferred or is held by a person and the consideration for such property has been provided or paid by another person. So basically, property A, so there is an property. So let's talk about a land. Land is held by Mr. A, but the payment has been paid by Mr. B. So basically, Mr. B has entered into an agreement with another party, say for the purchase of the property, but whoever in the name of another person. So okay, so how do we say it? There is Mr. A, Mr. B. Mr. A is selling the property, Mr. B is buying the property. Now Mr. B buys the property, but not in his name, in another person's name, Mr. C. Now Mr. C can be an imaginary person. So basically Mr. C can be a person who is non-existent at all. I mean, the person might not exist also. That particular transaction is called a binami transaction. Now, the property is held for the immediate or future benefit, directly or indirectly, of the person who has provided the consideration. Now, Mr. B has provided the consideration. Now, he will get any future benefit, immediate benefit, anything. That particular benefit that he will receive is also a binami transaction. Any query around what is a binami transaction? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so that's a binami transaction. So there are two types of what is a binami transaction. Okay. Next, moving ahead with the definition. Except when the property is held by a karta, a member of a HUF, a property is held for the benefit of the other family members. So if you're taking a property in the name of any HUF, it is not a binami transaction. A person standing in the fiduciary capacity of benefit of another person towards whom he stands in such capacity and includes a trustee, executor, partner, director of the company. Now, if you're taking the property as a director or a partner or a trustee, that is also not considered as a binami transaction. Now, any person being an individual in the name of his spouse or in the name of any child or such individual is also cannot be called a binami transaction. Any person in the name of his brother, sister, or lineal ancestor or descendant, where the names of the brother, sister are as joint holders in any document, that is also not a binami transaction. So in these four cases, you can buy the property in another person's name. So another person can pay the amount and the property name can be in another person. That is perfectly all right. Arrangement in respect of a property carried out and made in a fictitious name. For example, Mr. A purchases a property in the name of Mr. B, who is non-existent. So that's what I explained. A transaction or an arrangement in respect of a property where the owner of the property is not aware or denies knowledge of such owners. Now, you have bought a property in the person's name, but that person does not know itself that there's a flat in the person's name. So, example, Mr. A holding a flat in the name of Mr. Y. Upon inquiry by authorities, Mr. Y denies the ownership of the flat. So basically, in whose name the property has been purchased, that person does not know at all that there is a property in his name. So that is also called a binami transaction. A transaction or an arrangement in respect of a property where the person providing the consideration is not traceable or is fictitious. Mr. A purchased the flat, payment of which was made by an unknown person. So basically, someone else bought the flat and someone else paid the amount. Now, that is also considered as a binami transaction. So, okay. So those were the important. Okay, so anybody has any doubt on the binami transactions, on what are called binami transactions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, let's move ahead one second.
I mean, is binami safe?
No, binami transaction is completely prohibited by law. It is not allowed at all. You cannot do binami transactions.
Like they convert into legal in many of the cases in that time.
So what happens is, if it is a binami transaction, you cannot convert it into legal, because it is either in a fictitious person, the person is not in existence, or the person is not aware and he doesn't want to get into a transaction. So you cannot convert binami transactions into proper valid transactions. No person shall enter into binami transaction. Punishable. Now, if you enter, what happened? You will be punishable with an imprisonment for a term which may be extended to 3 years, or with fine, or with both. So you cannot enter into any binami transaction. So basically, whatever we saw, transactions, those type of transactions, you cannot enter. So there is no question of making it a valid agreement. Making it a valid agreement, it will, if it is considered a binami transaction, if the owner is not aware, or if the owner is fictitious, under both situations, you cannot make it a legal, because the whole transaction has already become a binami transaction. Now, prohibition of right to recover property held binami. Now, no suit, claim, action to enforce any right in respect of any property held in binami against the person in whom such the named person is held. Okay, so basically, in short, you cannot claim right on a binami property. Now, if I am selling it to someone, if I have not received the money, if I've already signed the agreement, I have received just small amount of token, I have not received a complete amount of token, that particular I cannot file a case, because the person is fictitious. There's no person whose existence, and even if the person is missing, or since I have given the property to another person who's not in existence at all, it's difficult for me to file a case against that particular person. Now, property held binami liable to confiscate. Now, the central government, if they are aware of a particular property being held as a binami transaction, the central government has a right to confiscate that particular property. Now, property to retransfer the ownership by binamdar, a person being a binamdar. Now, who is a binamdar? Is somebody who has done a binami transaction, shall not retransfer the binami property held by him to the beneficiary owner or any other person acting on his behalf. If it's retransferred, then it is null and void. So basically, transferring a binami property in someone else's name is not allowed by the binamdar. So basically, I say the property, I have done a binami transaction. I have taken the property in an in a fictitious person's name, so the person does not exist. I have indulged in a transaction. Now, what happens is, if since I am, I have entered into a transaction, I also will have a little portion in the binami property. Now, I will not be able to retransfer that property to anybody else. If I do it, it is null and void. Okay. Now, who is involved in a binami transaction? Now, as per the Act, there will be an initiating officer, there will be an approving authority, there will be an administrator, and there will be an adjudication authority. Now, all these people. So the first will be an officer, and then the approving authority. Whatever the initiating authority, submits, will have to submit all the findings to the authority, and the administrator will be, involved in trying to run the property or trying to sell the property, all of that. And the final one is the adjudication of authority, is where all the cases are being filed. Now, there are, so the Act has also said that there will be officers which shall assist these four authorities in enforcement of the Act. Now, who do you think are these officers? They have mentioned officers. So, who are the officers who will be involved in a binami transaction? I'll give you one example. Say it will be income tax. So income tax rates, all of that happens. So income tax authorities will also assist these in initiating officer, the approving authority. So who else? So income tax officer is one example. Who else is involved when it comes to a binami transaction?
Enforcement director.
Yes. Who else? It's easy. Come on, answer. Just think. There are multiple options.
CBI.
CBI, okay, to an extent, okay. But CBI is general, so something like income tax. Who else? Customs, yes. Customs also are involved.
IRS officers, basically.
IRS officers.
NCF.
IRS officers possible, but they will be connected with. We are looking at the Act, different acts where binami transactions people are involved. If it's a listed company, then who all will be involved?
NCLT.
Who?
NCLT.
NCLT, no. NCLT is a court. NCLT is a court, so they will not get involved.
They will appoint an officer, right?
No, not NCLT. If it's a listed entity, who are the parties involved? Stock exchange? Can it be possible?
Yes, no.
Stock exchange officers, there will be SEBI officers, there will be RBI officers. Then you have, if it is a FDI transaction, there will be FEMA related officers also. If it is something related to drugs, if drugs is involved, then you have the narcotic drugs set of officers also that will be involved. Now, if it's related to a bank, then you have banking act officers also who will be involved in this particular transaction. So all the acts, whatever that we are aware of, all of them will be involved when it is a binami transaction. Now, there is notice and attachment of property involved in binami transactions. Now, the initiating officer, what happens is, if he finds out that any person is a binamdar, he will initiate, he will do an investigation, and then he will write down reasons in writing, and he will issue an notice to person for a show cause. Within such period, you will have to come into it's basically like summons. So the initiating officer, after doing its ground checks, ground investigation, agrees that this person can be held in a binami transaction. So he will, whatever findings he has got, he will record everything in writing and he will issue a notice. Now, in the notice he'll mention that within so and so time you will have to appear. Now, whatever property has been held by the binami person, again, with the authority approval, for 90 days, it will be what do you call it? It will be held. It will be attached by the initiating officer for a period of 90 days. So basically, you cannot. So the binamdar will not have a right on the property. It will be in the. It will be held by the initiating authority. Now, when a notice is served for the entire transaction, say after the initiating officer has done its check, all of that, the authority, we saw the approving authority will issue a notice. It will be on the person. It will be, it will be either by post or by summons. It will be issued by a court under the as per the CPC. So a proper notice will be served for him to appear before the court. Now, an adjudication of binami property. Just 1 second, please. Of binami property, the person specified as the binamdar will be the person who is involved. Any person referred to as the beneficiary owner of the binami property will also be held responsible. Any interested party, including a banking company, will also be involved for the particular case. And any person who has made a claim in respect of the property, that person will also get a notice. So these are the 4 people who will be party to a binami transaction case. Now, in case if the property is held jointly by more than one person, then what happens is the notice is given to everybody. Okay, so the adjudication officer will give notice in writing within a period of 30 days from the date the reference has been received. Now, from whom the reference will be received is from the initiating officer, because he would have done the ground check. From him, 30 days, within a period of 30 days, a notice will be issued by the adjudication authority. Now, what does he do is he calls for evidence. He asks for evidence. He will also ask for, in case if the person has anything to tell, he will also, make that request that, because as per them, it is a binami property, but as per, say, if I am holding that property and I feel it's not a binami transaction, I have the right to mention that, these particular, so I have to be heard. So the adjudication of authority will give an opportunity for me to be heard. And they will call for evidence. So whenever they call for evidence, the person will have to provide. Yes? Manugara, you had any doubt? Okay. So they'll call for evidence, and you will have to prove yourself that that property is not a binami property. Now, if say the adjudication officer feels that only part of the property is binami property, then he'll mention that say if it's if it's a 2-floor apartment, they will say that the first floor is a binami transaction and the lower ground floor is free from binami transaction. So that property, that partial making of the property as a binami property is also possible. And whenever they feel that the property has been, it's a binami transaction, then they will attach the property. So it will become the responsible of the central government to hold the property. So central government will manage whatever is happening on the property. Say if rents have to be collected, it will be collected, and the central government will be responsible to collect those rents. Now, and for the entire procedure, there is a period of 1 year that from the time the reference has been made. From the time the reference has been made, within 1 year, they will have to give the final order. Now, for any case, if it extends, say if they have not been able to give a judgment within expiry of 1 year, a written detailed note should be given, should be recorded as why the period has been extended. Now, the management of the properties, whatever has been confiscated. Now, confiscated is nothing but it's the last procedure of the, say, they have considered it as a binami property and they will hold it. Now, the central government will appoint administrators who will take care of the property, who will manage the property. Now, for the entire procedure for the entire act, we have an appellant tribunal. Now, appellant tribunal, as you know, most of the acts, Income Tax Act, NCLT is also, they have a tribunal. So everybody has got an appellant tribunal. So as per the Binami Act, there is also an appellant tribunal. Now, what happens is, if you're not happy with what the adjudication officer told, what the adjudication authority has given a judgment, you can appeal to a tribunal. Now, from a tribunal, if you're not happy with what the tribunal says, within 60 days, appeal to the High Court is possible. Now, there are special courts also in this particular transaction. Now, who takes cases to the special court is none other than the authority or any officer of the central government or the state government will write and mention that this particular case has to be taken by the special courts. That's when the special court will take up the case. Now, they will try to finish the trial. The special court will try to finish the trial within 6 months from the date of filing of the complaint. So, if you want to go ahead and file a case in the special court, it is not possible. It has to come from the authority or from the officer of the central government or state government. So there are 3 courts: appellant tribunal, high court, and special courts. Okay, anybody's got any doubt with whatever we've studied in Binami Act? So Binami Act has been completed. It's a very small chapter. So we are done with Binami Act. So any questions with whatever we've done so far? You can ask.